We'll kick it over to Andrew for his 12-minute opening as well. The floor is all yours, Andrew.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before we dive into the topic at hand, can we get a standing ovation for Ridvan and his acceptance as an Orthodox catechumen? Welcome home, brother. And now it's time for you to lose. The topic tonight is significantly narrower than I think many people are comfortable with. It's often in the ambiguity that people make emotional arguments instead of using logic and reason, and that's exactly what you will see tonight from my opponent, which you did, which is why I wanted to narrow the topic to avoid this ambiguity. You'll see from him emotional rhetoric, but no actual arguments, which we didn't. The topic at hand is simple enough. The proposition is, do Christians have some sort of ought to support the political ideology of Zionism? Apostate prophet says yes, I say no. For the purpose of this debate, I will be using the most charitable definition of Zionism, which is the one AP agreed to pre-debate so that everyone's clear. A movement for, originally, the reestablishment and now the development and protection of a Jewish nation, which is now Israel. Seems straightforward enough, so let's get into it. I will be presenting 4 logical arguments for why Christians have no such obligation, secular or otherwise, to support this Jewish political endeavor. I will order them with my weakest objection first and my strongest objection last. Note, I have many more arguments than the ones I'll lay out tonight, but for the sake of time, I'll just stick with 4. To preface these arguments, I'll explain that Ridvan cannot make the claim that the religion of Judaism isn't part of Zionism. The right of return applies to both religious and ethnic Jews. Israeli law defines Jewish as someone who is born to a Jewish mother or who has converted to Judaism. In other words, the very people group defined as both religious Jews and non-religious Jews, emphasizing all Jews have the right of return. According to legal expert Nancy C. Richmond in her analysis of Israel's law of return published in Penn State International Law Review, quote, while Israel is not a theocracy, the Jewish religion has a central role in Israeli politics because the main purpose of the country's establishment was to create an independent Jewish state, end quote. This analysis is shared by virtually every scholar I can find, pro or anti-Zionist, and is logical due to the fact that if Zionism really had nothing to do with the Jewish religion, it wouldn't specify Jewish converts as being allowed this right of return. Very simple. This is an important preface, as apostate prophets going to argue this as a secular state, and that's simply untrue as a matter of fact. This leads me to argument 1. There is no ought under Christian ethics to support other religions which specifically oppose doctrine and an establishment of a homeland for them. The Jewish religion is acknowledged as being incorrect by every major Christian branch. This includes the Eastern Orthodox Church, which apostate prophet is converting to, as well as mainline Protestant and Roman Catholics. The specific problem here is particularly the denial of Jesus Christ being the Messiah, as outlined in simple language in 1 John 2:23. No one who denies the Son has the Father. Whoever acknowledges the Son has the Father also. In simple terms, if you don't accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, you don't worship the same God Christians worship. Now, this is also found in John 14:6. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father but through me. Christ as a Messiah is central to the creed of every major Christian profession of faith. So my first argument concludes, Christians ought not support this heretical for Christian political ideology, and supporting heretical ideology is itself sinful as it violates Christian ethics. The argument itself, premise 1, Christians who support heretical ideology denying the divinity of Christ are sinning. Premise 2, religious Jews reject the divinity of Christ after he's revealed himself to them as the Savior. Premise 3, if religious Jews reject Christ, they are incorrect, and Christians who claim they aren't are spreading heresy. Conclusion, religious Jews are, by Christian standards, wrong and should not be supported by Christians who would be spreading a heresy if they acknowledge Jewish theology is correct or give it support. To reduce it to a much simpler view, if one of my daughters had an OnlyFans, I would still love her. We are commanded, as we were commanded, to love the Jews and the Muslims, but I'm not going to promote it. Argument 2, the pragmatic argument and its response. Ridvan focuses a lot on the pragmatic approach through geopolitics to make an ought for support for Christians towards Zionism. focusing on the anti-Muslim factor rather than the Christian ethics factor. The pragmatic argument from him is simple. If we have to choose to support the state of Israel, who are seemingly at least sympathetic to the West and Christian nations, then we should, or Muslims will dominate the region unopposed. There's no way, and they are in no way sympathetic to the West. This is, in my opinion, his best argument, but it falls flat because it focuses on a false dialectic that relies on fallacious reasoning. In his view of pragmatism, he presents two choices where there are actually hundreds of choices, or more. For instance, there isn't, from a purely pragmatic approach, any reason I can think of for the protectors of Israel, in this case the West, to demand Israel open itself up to tens of thousands of Christian missionaries yearly and give them all enfranchised status. Many thousands of Christians would love to live there. This would effectively end the, quote, Jewish state apparatus, which would appease Muslims and also create a dynamic for which Christians could begin their work of converting Jews to Christianity, which is their mandate. Jews would not be persecuted under this arrangement and would still be able to freely practice Judaism as they saw fit and would be enfranchised to vote just like they are in all other nations. They also would have more protections from other nations who have vested interest in their settlers. Will this plan work? I have no idea. No clue. But to pretend it couldn't be done creates a false dialectic that only two choices exist where many choices exist. Ridvan would have to effectively argue Israel would need to remain a Jewish state from a secular view, which, to quote a thing he says often, that makes no sense. Why does the state actually need to be a Jewish ethno-state and Jewish religious state in order to protect Jews? That's actually rather stupid. All Western nations afford Jewish people the same rights as all of the citizens get. Ridvan, from the pragmatic approach, would actually have to argue that Israel remain a Jewish state from a secular standpoint, which he can't do. As long as the state protected Jews and they were allowed to practice their religion, why would it be a problem if it wasn't dominated by Jews themselves? To formalize this argument to Ridvan, premise one, Jews deserve a homeland for both ethnic Jewish individuals and religious Jewish individuals. This is his view. Premise two, the Jewish homeland is necessary because it protects Jews from persecution. Premise three, the Jewish homeland can't let in majorities of other groups for its own protection. Conclusion, Israel must remain an ethnic religious state with a supermajority of Jewish people. Now you can see here the conclusion doesn't actually follow from the premise. The key here seems to be that Jewish individuals deserve protection from atrocity, but the case isn't being made why they would specifically need a Jewish state to do so. Early anti-Zionist Jews made similar counter-arguments as well. Social dominance in culture doesn't assure prevention from atrocity for Jews any better than being a protected class under a different dominant culture. This seemingly can be viewed right now by the conflict going on with Hamas. At least not logically and not pragmatically. Also, we could use accelerated pragmatism here to point out the absurdity of this false dialectic by simply pointing out it could be pragmatic to nuke the entire Middle East, Israel included, and no longer worry about Middle Eastern conflicts and cultures ever. But my guess is most people would rightly state that would be against Christian ethics, which rejects pragmatism for Christian ethics, which Ridvan also should do. Now, even in easily dismantling the pragmatic argument, I will simply now grant it and the false dialectic of a binary choice to simply point out that even if I do, it still doesn't provide an ought for why Christians must support Zionism, which is both hilarious and ironic, but does provide us for an ought for Christians to not support it because you're being presented with a false binary. My last argument is the most important. It combines two arguments together for the sake of time. This argument focuses on the biggest ought, not for Christians, and requires a preface. The first preface is that Israel refuses to disclose if it has nuclear weapons and will neither confirm nor deny if they do, nor allow any inspection of them if they do. Our own CIA has confirmed they do, but they don't disclose it. Second, the Israeli government works hand in hand with the Temple Institute and American evangelicals. Also, there's an organization called CUFI, or Christians Unified for Israel. CUFI has 10 million members, and Israel doesn't even have 10 million citizens. CUFI spreads the false heresy of dispensationalism and hosts charismatic doctrine heresy as well. By Ridvan's own faith, he knows these are heresies. CUFI is on over 300 college campuses and growing. Their stated goal is to educate millions of Americans on these heresies, according to their own website, quote, through our 16 social media accounts, websites, blogs, daily briefs, to bring in groups of pastors and next generation influencers and students to Israel every year. Guys like Charlie Kirk and, dare I say, Ridvan and David Wood and others. To quote, those would be the types of influencers who would be their target. Not saying that CUFI paid for any of that. I'm just saying that would be the target. To reach thousands through Kufi Weekly and Israel Collective videos on YouTube, he's brought in over 1,000 major influencers, including celebrities. All of this is right from their site. Now, what do these people want, you ask? Well, this is going to blow your mind, but this is what they want. They want to assist with the fulfillment of biblical prophecy to bring about a new false Messiah and usher in an Armageddon. Not kidding. Not kidding. Now, the Temple Institute's goal in Israel, using both private and Israeli state money, is to rebuild the third temple and name a Messiah, which Christians know is a false Messiah. Israel, the supposed secular state, gives large swaths of money to the Temple Institute, and many government officials back this undertaking. So remember when I said Christians ought not support heresies? Well, here's why. Right now, this second, major personalities on the right, such as Charlie Kirk, most of the Daily Wire, even perhaps David Wood and Ridvan themselves, who I like, know for sure that any Messiah named by Israel will be Antichrist. They know it. Now, perhaps not the Antichrist, but the spirit of Antichrist will be with whoever this person is, and they have to denounce Christians definitionally. Have to. So to recap, the supposed secular Zionist government is giving money to the religious Zionists in Israel and get American support to do this with both American government money and direct aid, with mega preachers like John Hagee leading the charge in America with Kufi to back this endeavor to usher in Antichrist. So, Ridvan, I will see any argument you make for why Christians ought to support Zionism, and I will raise you one Antichrist as an ought not. This is the most powerful ought not for Christians to support Zionism, and it is really the one argument I want Ridvan to address, as it's my primary argument. So, the formal argument goes like this. Premise 1, Christians should not support false Messiah or Antichrist, ever. Premise 2, Zionists are attempting to name a false Messiah. Premise 3, secular and religious Zionists are working together to bring about biblical prophecy and name a false Messiah. Conclusion, Christians shouldn't support Zionism, especially not a Zionist nation with an Antichrist at its head and nukes, which it won't acknowledge. False Messiah, head of a state with nukes. Genius, Ridvan! Now, to end it very quickly with this, I'm going to enjoy this spirited debate, but I really want you to address this argument. With that, the floor is back. Go ahead.
Much.